And I also just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who's been helping with Dad and Mom and everything they've been going through. Every picture that came from the hospital, it feels like there's someone from church there. And then just seeing the big pile of gifts he has now and helping Mom with meals and stuff, it's very appreciated. Thank you. So, Sunday school this morning. I made me grin to see we're going through church history. I really enjoy that. Passage I'll be reading from this morning will be Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 18 to 22. So just thinking about, I don't know what all you've said and not said, but I just thought it would be good to restart looking at church history again this morning with the emphasis on this is about Jesus. It's not the history of us, it is the history of God working in his people. And that's what this chapter in Ephesians is about. First part of the chapter, Paul is talking about how God has reconciled to him. We used to be apart under the law, but Christ's work on the cross has reconciled, brought us together, and then this is his description of a church community. So Ephesians chapter 2, starting at verse 18. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building, fitly framed together, groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord, in which you are also builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. This being built on apostles and prophets, all these other people who have come before, given us a good example, but it is Jesus that is the most important. So, I'm not sure how the other superintendents have been doing for this lesson. I just decided to kind of give a brief summary for those who didn't read the chapter, and then kind of some of the questions it raised for me. What does it mean for us making our own church history right now? So this chapter starts off talking about the physical persecution they were facing, drownings, political opposition, things like that. And I've been at Bible school long enough to go down all these hypothetical conversations about persecution and how we would handle it. And it's interesting to read about it in actuality. The problems they still faced in that, personality differences, theological differences, things like that. And the question it started for me is, we obviously face cultural opposition here. What we believe as a church and want to practice, it goes against the current in a lot of ways. In politics, in sexuality, in our money, in community versus individualism, and things like that. And what are ways we can cheerfully and boldly resist those currents in a way that helps the church grow? Obviously, the way they resisted the persecution and opposition brought growth to the church for them. And with the pressures we face today, what can we do to provide a wholesome antidote? Because we see the brokenness that comes from people following untruth in all of these areas. After the persecution, it talks a little bit about Munster, which is definitely one of the more gory parts of Anabaptist history. And it's interesting. It's polygamy and violence and starvation. It's very sad, and it makes it difficult then because by name, these people, they wanted to have adult baptism too, and people associated with it. But to me, it showed the difference of the importance of strong, true theology. It was bad character and bad theology that led to this, and how can we stand on guard against that today? But I'm not sure if any of you took Gerald Martin's History of Anabaptism class at Maranatha. I just always remember him saying, "The bones are gone, but the cages are still there," in a very monotone voice. And it's true. There's still cages above the cathedral in Munster today that these people were hung in. Shows Europe's a little bit different perspective towards history. But then chapter continued on talking about difficulties that the Anabaptists faced with different theological applications of the ban and shunning. And it has a deeply sad human part, but certain parts of history just make me kind of giggle a little bit when it talked about each different group would deliver the other unto Satan when they had a different interpretation of the ban. There's a paragraph right at the end where it said each group would deliver unto Satan the group that it had come from. They would split off. Oh, can't trust you guys. Deliver you off to Satan. And it made me sad just because with the chaotic human element. But it's also really sad for a church. And I think it makes a really good question for us. What does it mean to boldly stand for what we believe, but also not be divisive to almost a comic amount? How can we stand strong, but also work together with those that name the name of Christ, and even look at the scriptures a little bit about what does it mean to have church discipline? There are some good passages that the book recommended. Some of them, Matthew 18, obviously Jesus' recommendation to try and deal with things personally first. Talk plainly to the person, not to the rest of the church when you have an issue. But then also Paul's instructions about, from 1 Corinthians 5, he's talking about some really gross incest that's going on in the church. And that's where he says, shut this person off, don't have anything to do with them. And then also in 2 Corinthians, he's then talking about if someone is forgiven and wants to be a part of the church, by all means, work with them, bring them back in, restore relationships if there can be true forgiveness. And just then talks about Menno Simons, his growth into becoming a leader. I thought it was interesting how it was personal Bible study that led to revival and the work of the Holy Spirit. And kind of with that, I admired the way the chapter talked about he did a lot for the church, but theologically he was a little strange sometimes. And I just admired that tension of what does respect and critique of church leaders look like? Within our church, within the larger group, what's a healthy balance of we don't deify them, we respect what they do, but we do have, there's a time and a place for healthy critique, and what does that look like? In specifically regard into Menno in this time. So, remembering this is about Jesus first. So, I forget the sequence a little bit, but I believe we go next into dismissing for Sunday school classes. Enjoying hearing the discussion. The teachers can be dismissed to go to their classes if they'd like, but we will start with the preschool and primary and go to their classes.